Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We from the group of four will present about variation of translation techniques and strategies. We are presented by Dina Trisnawati, Nurlina, and Tio Irawan. Okay, let's get started by me, Dina Trisnawati, with student ID number 1932000 and 2. We'll discuss translation technique. We use 18 translation techniques proposed by Molina and Albert 2002. See this card for a list of the various translation techniques according to Molina and Albert. Let's discuss one by one. Borrowing. Here, words are deliberately taken straight from the source language and transferred into the target language. There are two types, namely pure borrowing and naturalized borrowing. You can see the example of pure is mixer, translated to mixer, and then the example of naturalized is economy, translated to economy. Next, calque. It refers to the practice of borrowing a phrase from another language and translating it literally into your target language. For example, assistant manager, translated to assistant manager. And then, literal translation is your straightforward word for word translation. For the example, the president gave the present to Michael last week. Translated to, Presiden memberi hadiah itu pada Michael minggu lalu. Transposition. Transposition is a translation technique that changes the grammatical categories of the source language in the target language. For example, changing words into phrases. See an example of this. Damp skin, translated to kulit yang kusam. Okay, next, modulation. Modulation is a translation technique that is applied by changing the point of view, focus, or cognitive aspects that exist in source language lexically or structurally. Look at the example. I make a wish on the first little star that I see in the sky. Translated to, aku mengucapkan kepada bintang kecil yang pertama muncul di langit. Amplification. This technique is the same as explaining, adding, prefixing the exclusivist. For the example, Ramadan, translated to bulan puasa kaum muslim. And then compensation is a translation technique that is carried out by conveying a message to another part of the translated text. Look at the example, a pair of scissors, translated to sebuah gunting. Adaptation. Adaptation is a technique that changes the cultural elements of the source language with cultural elements that are known in the target language. Look at the example, 21 stone, translated to 133 kilo. Discursive creation. Translation technique that use temporary equivalents that are far from the original context. This technique often appears in the translation of film titles, books, and novels. For the example, the Minangkabau response to the Dutch colonial rule in the 19th century. Translated to asal-usul elit Minangkabau modern, respons terhadap kolonial Belanda 1920. And then, established equivalent, a technique for using a term of expression that is familiar or recognized in the dictionary of the target language as the equivalent in the source language. Look at the example, watered, translated to ngiler. Okay, let's move to linguistic compression. Translation technique that unite or collect linguistic elements in the source language. This technique is often used in interpreting or dubbing. Look at the example, are you sleepy? Translated to ngantuk. Description. Translation technique that are applied with terms or expressions with descriptions of their form and function. For the example, panettone, translated to kue tradisional Italia yang dimakan pada saat tahun baru. Okay, then generalization. This technique uses more general terms in the target language for a more specific source language. For the example, penthouse or mansion, translated to tempat tinggal. Linguistic amplification. Translation technique is carried out by adding a language element in target language. For the example, Pardon me? Translated to, dapatkah Anda mengulang kata-kata Anda? And then particularization. Particularization is a technique using more concrete or specific terms. For the example, air transportation, translated to pesawat. Next, reduction. Compresses the information contained in the source language into the target language. For the example, SBY, the President of Republic of Indonesia, translated to SBY. Substitutions. Translation technique that changing linguistic elements into paralinguistic, such as intonation and gestures. For the example, sign language in Arabic, putting hand on chest is translated as thank you. Okay, and the last is variation. Translation technique that replace linguistic or paralinguistic elements that affect linguistic variation. For the example, give it to me now, translated to berikan barang itu ke gue sekarang.
Okay, my name is Nurlina. My ID number is 19320008. And next, I will explain about translation strategy. So, what is translation strategy? What is meant by translation strategy here is tactics translator to translate words or groups of words. And here, another definition of strategy. According to Wikipedia Committee, a strategy is a long-term plan of actions designed to achieve a particular goal. And according to Curriculum Learning Literate Features Glossary, a strategy is a plan, deliberate, goal-oriented procedure achieved with a sequence of steps subject to monitoring and modification. These definitions are general and can be related to different fields of study. This study mainly concerns translation strategies, although the above-mentioned definitions can be narrowed down to this research field as well. Translation strategies have their own characteristics, through which one can gain an appropriate understanding of them. There are three types of translation strategy. The first type is structural strategy. These local strategies change the grammatical structure of the target text in relation to the source text. In translation studies, many theorists have used the term translation strategies widely, but with some considerable differences in the meaning and the perspective from which they look at it. There are four kinds of structural strategies. First, addition, second, subtraction, third, transposition, and the last is modulation. Addition. This strategy uses to add the words in the target language structure because the target language needs to add some words. For example, search language, saya guru. Target language, I am a teacher. In this example here, the words am and a must be added in order to be accepted in the target language structure. The second is subtraction. Subtraction, or in bahasa we call this pengurangan. Subtraction means there is a omitting structural element in the target language. For example, search language, you should go home. Target language, kamu mesti pulang. In the example here, the word structural element of the verb go is omitted. The third is transposition. In this strategy, the translator changes the search language in the target language sentence to get some meaning. For example, search language, musical instrument can be divided into two basic groups. Target language, alat musik bisa dibagi menjadi dua kelompok dasar. And the fourth is modulation. According to Neumark, modulation is a strategy for translating phrases, clauses, or sentence Here the translator sees message in search language sentence from a different point of view. This strategy is used when translating words with meaning letters don't produce sensible or flexible translation. For example, search language, I broke my leg. Target language, kakiku patah. The next material is semantic strategies. Semantic strategies are translation strategies relate with the meaning. These strategies are focused in the words, phrases, clauses, and sentence. There are 7 kinds of semantic strategies. The first is borrowing, the second is cultural equivalent, the third is descriptive equivalent, the fourth is synonym, the fifth is official translation, the sixth is reduction and expansion, and the seventh is omission. Borrowing. Borrowing is a translation strategy where the translator uses a word or expression from search language in the target language. For example, search language mode and the target language is also mode. Cultural equivalent. In this strategy, the translator translates the search language cultural word with the target language cultural word. For example, search language Jaksa Agung, target language Attorney General. Next, descriptive equivalent and componential analysis. This strategy is used when the search language word is expressed by its description and function. For example, the word samurai is described as the Japanese aristocracy from the 11th to 19th century.
Okay, we continue our topic, synonym. This strategy is used when the translator uses the target language words that have more or less the same meaning for the short language word. For example, what a cute baby you have got. Alangkah lucunya bayimu. And then official translator. This strategy is used to formal translation. When translator translates a text from another language into Indonesian and use this strategy. For example, read-only memory, translate on in the book into memory simpan tetap. The reduction and expansion. Reduction means reducing the short language word component. For example, automobile translates as mobil. And the expansion is the opposite of reduction. For example, while translated as ikan paus, because if not added the word ikan, it might mean the pope. Omission. Omission means deleting a word or a tag part of short language in the target language. This strategy is used when the meaning carried by the word is not important enough to the development of the text. For example, sama dengan Raden Ayu ibunya, katanya lirih. Translate on, just like her mother, she was spared. The word Raden Ayu from short language is not translated into target language. Pragmatic strategies. Pragmatics is a study that is only discuss the lexical meaning of the word but discuss the meaning based on the context of the speaker. Next, this is kind of pragmatic strategies. There are 9 types. Okay, first, changing the clarity of meaning. With this strategy, the meaning in short language is made either more explicit or more implicit. For example, the police officer will help the woman. Chances on Polwan akan membantu ibu-ibu. Second, changing interpersonal relationship. Changing the relationship between the writer and the reader can be done by changing the level of formality. The level of reader engagement choice the technical term. For example, this article will discuss democracy in developed countries. Translate on, kita akan membahas demokrasi di negara-negara maju di dalam tulisan ini. The third, changing illocutionary. Illocutionary change refers to change in speech art. For example, from statement to request. It is too late. It's not good for me to be here. Malam ini telah larut. Bolehkah saya pulang? And the fourth, adding and removing information. The addition of the information was be done because of the clarity of meaning. Here, the translator includes additional information in the translated text because he thinks the reader really need it. For example, the skin with its hard and scaly is greyish in color, thus helping the camouflage it from predator when at the weather. Translated as kulitnya yang keras dan berbisik berwarna abu-abu. Dengan demikian, kulit ini membantunya berkamuflase, menyesuaikan diri dengan keadaan lingkungan untuk menyelamatkan diri dari predator hewan pemangsa jika berada di dalam air. The fifth, trans-editing. This is done by editing the short language text first and then translating it. Okay, the last is change the order of information. This strategy is called changing coherent by Chesterman 1997 and classified by the Newmark into transparency. This type including breaking one short language sentence into two or more target language sentences. Newmark 1988. For example, some species are very large indeed, and the blue whale, which can exceed 30 meters in length, is the largest animal to have lived on Earth. Superficially, the whale looks rather like the fish, but there are important differences in its external structure. Its tail consists of a pair of broad, flat, horizontal petals. The tail of a fish is vertical, and it has single nostril on the top of its large bird head. Translated as, beberapa spesies sangatlah besar. Ikan paus biru yang bisa mencapai panjang lebih dari 30 meter adalah binatang terbesar yang pernah hidup di bumi. Sepintas ikan paus tampak seperti ikan biasa. Ekornya yang terdiri dari sepasang silip lebar, pipi, dan mendatar. Dan sementara ekor ikan biasa tegak. Ikan paus mempunyai satu lubang hidung berada di atas kepalanya yang besar dan lebar. Okay, that's all from us. Thanks for your attention. Do you have any question? Feel free to ask in WhatsApp group. I'm Tio Irawan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.